Hello, my name is Michael Lambert, and today I want to talk a little bit about why it is that Rishi Sunak decided to call an election in July as opposed to waiting until the autumn, which everybody was expecting. But before I do that, I'd like to start with one or two other stories that have appeared in the press in the last few days. It's been a busy time. I want to start with some good news, actually. Well, it's only good news for one person, but there's a gentleman by the name of Graham King, and he owns something called Clear Springs Ready Homes, and he accommodates asylum seekers. You know, all these people who are not being processed because the government prefers to have a big build-up so that they can point at the how important it is to get rid of all these people or to stop them coming. Anyway, this Graham King with his Clear Springs, he's well, back in 2020 he made £763,000 accommodating asylum seekers. I mean, it's a lot of money. 760. It's $750,000. In 2021, that had gone up by 6 times. In 2021, he made $4.76 million accommodating asylum seekers. 2022, 2 years ago, that had gone up 7 times. 33.8 million he made then. Last year, Graham made a profit, or his firm made a profit before tax of, well, just about 75 million. So you can see how expensive it is to accommodate asylum seekers. And Graham has gone from being reasonably modestly well off, I presume a few years ago, to now being worth £750 million. And he's in the Sunday Times rich list ahead of the Prime Minister and ahead of the King. So it does show there's quite a lot of money in accommodating asylum seekers. Actually, concerning his properties, the Guardian reported in 2019 that hundreds of asylum seekers were crammed into Clear Springs, that's his company, Clear Springs Accommodation, which was overrun by cockroaches, rats and mice. Lawyers described the sites as depraved and likely unfit for human habitation. One said the conditions appeared to breach environmental health laws as well as statutory rules on overcrowding. So he's packing them into these places where he's not spending an awful lot of money on making them comfortable, and we're all paying for it. But it's nice for Graham. He must be very, very happy. Also, it was mentioned in the press somewhere a couple of days ago that if we had, and we're obviously not going to now, but if we had sent asylum seekers to Rwanda, if any of them had needed any hospital treatment, which couldn't have been provided in Rwanda, they'd have had to be flown to a hospital in another country, perhaps back to Europe and so on, for hospital treatment, and we would have had to pay for all that. That would have been part of our responsibility. Corporate profits, we'll all know that prices are going up and up and up, and everything is the cost of living crisis is not going away. But it's interesting to know that since the pandemic, wholesale and retail profits have gone up by an average of 36%. Water and sewage gone up 44%, but I mean that's for dividends, obviously. Transport logistics gone up 47%. Health and social work, that's private healthcare, and care homes, I suppose, has gone up 118%. And electricity gas supply since the pandemic has gone up 363%. And of course, they're all making absolutely record profits, which is nice. Immigration, the immigration figures have just come out. Net immigration last year was 685,000, which is a bit less than the year before. So that's working anyway. And that compares actually with a few 100,000 that we used to when we had free movement with the EU. These are people coming from all over the world to replace those who previously would have come from the EU. Now, Simon Case, remember him? He suddenly got ill when it was time to appear before the COVID inquiry. Well, he's been appearing this week. I must say, he's somebody who gives the impression that he's also unlimited self-love. He's so pleased with himself. I mean, he's almost up in Rees-Mogg standards of self-satisfaction. But anyway, he's been giving evidence, and he had to say various things about Johnson, for example. He said he was Johnson's was the worst governor he'd ever seen. He said that Johnson was like a he described as a Trump-Bolsonaro levels of mad and dangerous. He said that far from Dominic Cummings being the power behind the throne, it was very much Johnson's wife who was calling the shots, that Johnson was thoroughly indecisive, and that very often it was Sunak who was leading Johnson. And he also said that the Sunak's eat out to spread the virus scheme was launched without any reference to Whitty or Vallance, and was entirely his initiative. He said he described it as a crisis plus pygmies, being absolutely toxic. And unfortunately, like Lord Bethel and like Sunak and like Johnson, some of his WhatsApp messages got accidentally deleted. He described it as his own idiocy that he'd actually deleted a whole, I think 9 batches of WhatsApps, but I don't suppose they were important anyway. At the same time, the post office inquiry is going on with the sort of wishy-washy, shabby little dinner lady, Paula Vennells, falling apart and being absolutely destroyed. I mean, when you watch her for even 5 minutes, you know, it's you just cannot believe that someone of that quality, someone as stupid as her, could ever become head of the post office. And it's not the least bit surprised that the whole thing was absolutely chaotic, and well, we wait to see what happens to her. But frankly, if she's locked up, I wouldn't be surprised. And so let's talk about Sunak. Now, Sunak, as we all know, his parents were pharmacists. He's got a younger brother and a younger sister. He went to Winchester College, where he was head boy. Went off to Oxford. He got a first in PPE, and then he got a scholarship, a Fulbright scholarship to Stanford University in America, where he met his wife and so on. And then he went to work for Goldman Sachs, where no doubt he made a lot of money. And then after that, he became a hedge fund manager. And he then decided to stand for Parliament. And he stood in Richmond in Yorkshire, which is the former constituency of William Hague. And he was successful, and I mean, it's a very safe seat anyway. And so he got into Parliament. And then within a short while, Theresa May made him a junior minister in the Department of Local Government. Then when Johnson became Prime Minister, he made him First Secretary of the Treasury, and then when Sajid Javid left, he became Chancellor of the Exchequer. Now, the timing was fortunate for him because he became Chancellor of the Exchequer just before COVID broke out, and response to COVID involved giving away lots and lots of money, and nobody is very unpopular if they give away a lot of money, and so he was credited for keeping the economy going, keeping people from starving and so on. And despite the fact that he came up with the bounce back loan scheme, which was exploited no end by criminals, and resulted in something in the region of $6 billion being defrauded. And he came out with the Eat Out to Help Out scheme as well, which was also a complete and utter disaster. He failed to insure against interest rates going up, which is said to have cost 11 billion. So I don't think he was the greatest Chancellor of the Exchequer we've ever had, but nonetheless, as I said before, it seems that he was very much bossing Johnson around and leading him along. And in due course, when everybody started turning against Johnson, of course, Sunak resigned, and that led to Johnson's downfall. And so he ended up as Prime Minister, most unlikely, and as a result of a whole succession of really different events that resulted in him being a number 10. And I think seldom has anybody less suited, less capable of being Prime Minister has ever occupied that position. I mean, he's been an absolute utter disaster. It seems to me that Sunak is a man with almost no personality whatsoever, no charisma, no charm, no wit. I don't think he's very, very limited contact with ordinary people. And for any politician, it's really important to be able to get on with everybody. I mean, that's part of the skill of the job. I don't think he's got that. I think he's just thoroughly awkward all the time. He looks awkward. He has that sort of rictus grin on his face, and particularly he dislikes being challenged. You know, if he's being interviewed and someone challenges him, he immediately gets tetchy. We all see it. He can't hide it, because I think throughout his life he's always had whatever he's wanted. Everything's come to him easily, and suddenly he finds himself in a position where, frankly, he's pretty unpopular, and frankly, he must know, because everybody else can see it, he's absolutely useless at the job. Absolutely useless. And so he spends a lot of his time flying around in a helicopter and meeting people for photo opportunities, and incessantly going on with this fixation he has with stopping little boats in Rwanda, which has just been such a waste of time when we are facing so many problems. So I think he's been, as a Prime Minister, absolutely, utterly useless. And I must say, the picture of him standing in the rain and the music blaring away against him was a perfect visual metaphor for the disaster of his premiership. Absolutely hopeless. The sooner he's gone, the better. But he was interviewed on the day after his announcement, was it 2 or 3 days ago, by Nick Robinson on the Today programme. And this was Nick Robinson's question, and I think this gives you an idea of how hopeless Sunak is. Nick Robinson said there were 3 different prime ministers in a year, 4 different chancellors in a year, a home secretary sacked for 6 days and then hired again and sacked again a year later, a prime minister who was forced out of office because he was judged to be lying by his own colleagues in Parliament, and another Prime Minister who even you think crashed the economy. Why on earth should people give the Conservatives another term? Now, you would have thought that any politician with even a slight bit of skill would have said, well, yeah, we've had lots of problems, and it's true, things have not gone right, but we are getting things right. His response is, I'm really proud of what the Conservatives have done in office. When we came into office 14 years ago, Labour had bankrupted the economy. And it's just ridiculous. And I think it's this also, I think where he's lost any little bit of credibility he had is this constant repetition of these same things, like the plan is working, Labour don't have a plan, and we've got to stop the boats. It's stuff that, you know, it's also meaningless, and it's so patronising to the electorate anyway. You know, as I say, he just has never had a clue, and I think everybody's probably rather relieved. The whole nation's rather relieved that he's finally called an election. Although I think a lot of we know that a lot of Tory MPs are pretty irritated because it hasn't given them much time, and a lot of them think that things might have gone better if he'd hung on to the autumn. But here's where I think he. You see, there are 2 theories here. Well, there's one theory. The theory is that he got wind of the fact there was going to be a vote of no confidence in him, which could well have been the case, and that he thought, just out of spite, because he's a spiteful little man, as a spite, he'd just say, well, sod the lot of you, I'm going to go for an election now and you'll all lose your seats. And he stood out in the rain, you know, sort of kind of in a bit of a wuss, saying well, I'll teach you, I'll serve you all right for not being nice to me. But I don't think that's it. I think it's this. I think he's the first Prime Minister we've had of Indian heritage. His family must have been very proud, his wife and his children and his in-laws, his famous in-laws, and his parents must have been extremely proud. And I think a lot of Indians must have been very, very proud. I mean, after all, we're the country that ruled India for 89 years. And here we have someone who's a son of Indian immigrants who's Prime Minister. So I think people must have been very happy about it, and I think people would have had very high expectations. But I think very, very soon he would have started to disappoint, and as time went by, people have seen more and more that he is absolutely useless. People have seen how badly the economy is doing, how we've got poverty, how we've got sewage in the rivers, how badly everything is going. And he knows, he must know absolutely without any question of doubt that he's not going to win an election whenever it's held. I mean, he is absolutely finished. And so I think it must have been this. I think he must have sat down with his wife and said, look, this is hell. I mean, he must really hate this job. You can almost feel sorry for him. It must be such a terrible thing to be in, so useless and so unpopular and so destined to lose in what is expected to be a pretty impressive election result. I think he must have said, look, I just had enough of this. And I think his wife, she's given £3 million to a school in California where presumably their daughters are going to go. And they know that after the autumn that he's not going to be Prime Minister any longer. And they must have said, just why bother? Why go on with this? Let's just call it a day and call an election at the earliest possible opportunity. And I think when it was announced on Monday this week that inflation was down to 2.3%, that gave an opportunity to come out and say, look, it's fantastic. I've done this single-handed. I've got inflation down to 2.3%. It's all working. That gave an opportunity then to say we'll call an election on a high point. And I think I think that's it. I think that's why he's decided. I think he's just had enough, and you can hardly blame him, really. I mean, in his situation, he must wake up every morning. It must be a nightmare. I bet he's got a chart beside his bed with what is it, 642 squares on it, and ticking them off every day until the election takes place, and he can get that out of it. And so I think what will happen, it seems likely he's going to win his seat, but I would have thought almost immediately after that he'll resign and they'll be off to California, and that'll be that. Anyway, that's my theory. That's my idea. It's what I think about it. So, as always, if you've watched this far, thank you very much indeed. And until next time, bye for now.